The decision to impose sweeping 25% tariffs on imported cars and auto parts marks a dramatic escalation of trade tensions and an aggressive shift toward protectionism that could have severe economic consequences. Announced by President Donald Trump, these tariffs are set to take effect within days, upending global supply chains, raising consumer prices, and provoking the threat of international retaliation. While the administration frames the move as a strategy to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S., the reality is far more troubling. Rather than revitalizing the domestic auto industry, these tariffs are likely to disrupt markets, push automakers into difficult financial positions, and lead to price hikes that will directly impact American consumers. This is not just a policy shift. It's a major gamble that could send economic shockwaves through the auto industry and beyond. The immediate impact will be higher prices on nearly every car sold in the United States. Given that roughly half of all vehicles purchased in the U.S. are imports, and even domestically assembled cars rely heavily on foreign parts, there is no escaping the financial burden. American consumers will likely see price increases ranging from several thousand to over $10,000 per vehicle, according to industry estimates. Automakers will be forced to either absorb the costs, hurting their already tight profit margins, or pass them directly to consumers. In a market already facing high interest rates and affordability concerns, this could cripple car sales and slow economic growth. Stock markets reacted swiftly and negatively to the announcement. Major automakers, including General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, saw their share prices tumble in after-hours trading, signaling investor fears over the potential damage these tariffs could inflict. Asian and European automakers, which have long relied on U.S. sales, also saw their stocks decline. Countries with major auto industries, including Japan, South Korea, Canada, and the European Union, have already signaled strong opposition to the move, with some openly discussing retaliation. A full-scale trade war is now a very real possibility. The structure of North America's auto industry further complicates the situation. For decades, manufacturers have operated under free trade agreements that treat the U.S., Canada, and Mexico as a single production network. Parts and vehicles move across borders multiple times before they reach dealerships. The new tariffs threaten to unravel this delicate system, forcing manufacturers to reconsider where they produce vehicles. However, shifting production to the U.S. is not a simple process. Building new factories takes years and billions of dollars, costs that companies are unlikely to take on when faced with this level of economic uncertainty. Rather than incentivizing domestic investment, the tariffs could instead encourage automakers to reduce production, cut jobs, or seek alternative markets outside the U.S. International allies are already signaling that retaliation is imminent. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has called the tariffs a direct attack on the UDES, Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, warning that Ottawa will respond with countermeasures. European leaders have also condemned the move, and Asian economies, particularly South Korea and Japan, are holding emergency meetings to assess their options. If retaliatory tariffs are imposed on American exports, including U.S.-made vehicles, the auto industry could face a devastating chain reaction. Not only would manufacturers struggle with rising costs at home, but they could also lose key markets abroad, further depressing sales and profits. American workers are not immune from the fallout. While the administration argues that these tariffs will encourage job growth, the opposite is more likely. The U.S. auto industry is deeply integrated with foreign supply chains, meaning that disruptions in production elsewhere could lead to factory closures or layoffs in America. Auto parts suppliers, which employ far more workers than assembly plants, could see significant declines in business if manufacturing in Mexico and Canada slows down. Many of these suppliers are based in the Midwest, precisely the region Trump claims to be helping. If plants in Canada and Mexico reduce production due to tariffs, American parts suppliers will suffer, putting thousands of jobs at risk. History has shown that tariffs rarely achieve their intended goals without causing severe collateral damage. The last time the U.S. imposed heavy tariffs on steel and aluminum, American manufacturers faced higher costs, leading to layoffs and plant closures. Similar outcomes are expected here, particularly given the scale of the automotive industry. And while the administration argues that the tariffs will encourage foreign automakers to build more factories in the U.S., The reality is that companies will be hesitant to make long-term investments in a market that now appears highly unpredictable. Instead of bringing stability, these tariffs inject uncertainty into an industry that relies on careful planning and long-term investment. Beyond the economic implications, this move raises serious geopolitical concerns. At a time when the U.S. is already engaged in multiple trade disputes with China, the European Union, and even longtime allies, this escalation adds another layer of tension. Countries that have traditionally cooperated with the U.S. on economic and security issues may now view Washington as an unreliable partner. The broader consequences of this could extend far beyond the auto industry, affecting diplomatic relations, military cooperation, and global economic stability. For consumers, the immediate reality is simple. Cars are about to get much more expensive, and there will be fewer options on the market. Entry-level vehicles, which are often built in Mexico and Canada to keep costs down, may disappear altogether, making car ownership less accessible for lower-income Americans. Even American-built vehicles will see price hikes, as automakers struggle with higher parts costs. This policy will hit hardest at a time when inflation remains a concern and affordability is already a major issue for millions of Americans. What makes this situation even more concerning is that the administration has hinted that these tariffs are only the beginning. With additional trade measures expected in the coming weeks, there is no clear indication of when or how this escalation will end. If history is any guide, tariffs often lead to more tariffs, triggering a cycle of retaliation that harms all sides involved. Instead of creating jobs and strengthening the economy, this decision could lead to an economic slowdown, widespread job losses, and a potential collapse in auto sales. The warning signs are clear. These tariffs are a high-stakes gamble with enormous risks. Rather than fostering economic growth, they threaten to destabilize an industry that millions of Americans rely on for jobs, transportation, and investment. The ripple effects will not be contained to automakers alone. They will extend to dealerships, suppliers, and the broader economy. If the administration does not reverse course or implement significant exemptions, the damage could be long-lasting, with consequences that extend far beyond the auto industry. What is being framed as a bold move for American manufacturing could ultimately prove to be a costly miscalculation, one that leaves consumers, businesses, and workers paying the price.